the MGAA, and I'm delighted to welcome today's session representatives from Group for today's professional. So I'm just going to run keeping points. So I know this might sound familiar, come along sessions regularly, but we do just remind you that you don't have access to your camera and microphone just yet. We will make this available towards the end of the session when we've got the Q&A, so you can interact with the presenters then. And you'll also have the option of using the chat box throughout the session. But like I said, we'll leave time at the end for Q&A, so please don't worry. We are recording today's session, and a link to the recording will be sent out post-session. So if you do want to recap on anything, you can access it. And a reminder that you can use these sessions as part of your CPD if you find it meets your learning needs. And then just a final note about AI note takers. We don't have permission to use them, so please, if you do have them on, I'll ask that you turn them off, and I will have to remove them if any have made it into the meeting. But without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's session, and I'm going to hand over to Gary.
Thanks very much, Manveen. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start with some quick introductions from the panel. So if I go first, I'm Gary de Groot. I'm the Growth Director at Innovation Group, responsible for all of our sales, marketing and account management divisions. And with that, I'll hand over to Stu Thornley.
Hi everyone, I'm Stu Thornley. I look after the account management, business development and growth function day to day within our property and liability world. I report up into Gary and generally drive all of the day-to-day activity of our team as we get out there in the market. Over to Claire from there.
Hi, I'm Claire O'Driscoll. I'm Strategic Account Manager at Innovation Group, and I'm responsible for our motor accounts. I'll hand over to Wayne. Oh, thank you.
To me, hi, I'm Wayne Calderbank. I'm Director of Data and Claim Services, which takes into account data and services in claims.
Michael.
And over to Michael.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Lewis. In addition to being the CEO at Claim Technology, much of my time is also spent on academic research and publication and creating new technology methods for patenting.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, we're really excited you could all join us today. Obviously, this is a topic that is on every business's roadmap at the moment to discuss AI automation. How do we get the most out of that? What are the challenges that this could bring? And today we're going to talk specifically in relation to claims. We've got representatives from both our motor and property business to talk about how that may apply to their particular disciplines. But yeah, we're going to do a Q&A as well at the end. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll try to deal with as many of those if possible. Of course, if there's anything that you don't want to ask on here, but you'd like to ask privately, get in touch with me or one of the guys here, and I'm sure we'd be happy to help out. Before we dig into our first question, I thought there's a few pieces of information which are publicly available, and I'm happy to share these after the session that sort of set the context of why this has become so important. So public information is saying 92% of insurers and 98% of TPAs are already using some form of AI and automation within their businesses. I'm surprised it's that low. In truth, this has been such a hot topic for a number of years now, but clearly this is the direction of travel that we're going in. 62% of insurers say they've partially automated workflows, but only 9% have fully automated them. So it does feel like we're still on that journey to get to where we need to. And this is quite embryonic, particularly using AI at the moment. Only 30% of UK customers confirmed that they would be happy for a fully automated claims journey. Read into that what you will. I'm sure people said something similar in the Industrial Revolution about not getting rid of people and using machinery. I think that will change over time. And actually, no shocks there. About 50% of younger customers are very much in favour of using AI to drive claims outcomes. Juxtapose that with over 55s, where 47% say they don't want any automation or AI invading their claims journey whatsoever. So we've got different dynamics, different demographics looking at this differently. For TPAs such as Innovation Group and loss adjusters such as us, for insurers and MGAs such as you guys, how do we balance all of that together to get the correct outcomes? And so we're going to move on now to our first question. And Wayne, I'm going to come to you first. It's a really easy one, a bit of a cliche one, but how important will AI and automation be in claims management over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, so I guess, Gary, I guess it depends what problem we're trying to solve here. So if the problem is businesses need to keep up with each other in order to be able to price effectively, to be able to provide the right service, look after customers. The answer is incredibly important. If what we're trying to do is adopt AI for the sake of it, because we feel like we need to have some kind of AI process to sell our service and so on and so forth, I don't think it's all that important. For me, it's more about what is it that we have a problem within the industry, what are we not very good at in the industry, and how can we use AI to help fix those problems before we even start moving into some of the kind of big ticket stuff which we can do. I can go into a whole load of stuff about around customer journey and things like that, but I don't want to just answer this first question and take 40 minutes answering it. But that's my initial thought.
Stu, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to disagree. This is going to be hugely important, but just how much for us as a business, what do you see 5 to 10 years in the way claims are managed and the use of automation and AI?
I think this is unavoidable for us in our world, to be honest. It's not necessarily just because it's exciting technology, but I think as an industry, whether you're working on a motor claim, whether you're working on a property claim, whether it's liability, claims teams across the industry are already stretched. Everyone's being asked to move faster. Everyone's being asked to do a better job for customers. Everyone's being asked to reduce their indemnity spend, to reduce their costs, etc., etc. And that's often with the same headcount across the entire industry. And customer expectations have just totally changed in the last 10 years. They changed after COVID, and they've changed even more in the last year. Like, we're not compared in what we do to another insurer, to another TPA, to another loss adjuster. We are compared to Amazon, to Uber, to all those other technologies everyone's using day to day. So in a nutshell, we've got to evolve with the times. And I think that is pretty much coming to where Wayne was just talking about. It's about evolving and redesigning how the claims are actually flowing. I think in 5 to 10 years, it'll be a surprise to find a claims operation out there that doesn't have some level of automation embedded across its end-to-end journey. It's just going to be one of those things that you accept in the same way that digital payments are everywhere now, or you're happy to pay on your phone everywhere now. It's just going to be par for the course for us.
Yeah, I suspect, Stu, that those businesses that don't conform will end up falling away. There's always that Blockbuster Video analogy where they said in 2005 that no one's ever going to stream movies online, and then 10 years later they were out of business. So I think there's conformities and inevitability here. So Michael, let's come to you for this next question then. Claims technology, your business, where do you see the key areas of claims management that can most benefit from automation and use of AI? And actually, to sort of balance that as well, do you see any that you don't feel are right for huge amounts of automation and AI layered over the top?
Okay, so if you break claims automation down to its fundamentals, it really consists of only 3 pillars. It's the ability to gather data, to make decisions on that data, and to orchestrate tasks based on those decisions. So let's take each of those in turn and understand the applicability of AI. First, with regards to data, I think this is where AI is genuinely transformative. So conversational journeys, document extraction, image assessment, AI excels at interpreting unstructured information at scale. And because it's strong at pattern recognition, it's also extremely good at validating data. So it can detect fraud signals. It can identify anomalies between what the customer says and what the image, the evidence suggests, and surface inconsistencies that humans might miss. Using AI when it comes to data is relatively low risk, and it's already delivering measurable value. The second pillar of automation is really around decision making, and this is where I think things become much more nuanced. There are really 2 types of decision. The first is based around risk scoring and prioritization. AI can be very effective here, so triaging claims, routing claims. And this is where AI and the ability to compute probability and confidence is sufficient for that decision. But AI can't be used when in a regulated environment where you have to be able to make a decision that has to be explained, or where you're accountable for that decision. And so a useful rule of thumb is you can use AI to make decisions where prediction is enough, but predictions aren't the same as decisions, and where you require correctness and the ability to defensibility, AI use is not appropriate. And that takes us really to the final piece around automation. It's just about orchestration. We're seeing a lot more in terms of agentic AI. And here again, I think it's what we need to understand is the limits of what you can do safely with AI. AI agents can be very good for automating discrete tasks, but what you don't want them to do is to be in charge of understanding the path between where you are now and what you need to resolve the claim, because that's when you'll start to see the AI going off-piste and exploring avenues that you can't really defend. So I think AI will be absolutely important in terms of automating parts of the journey, but much will depend on the architecture and the control around the use of AI as much as the AI itself.
Thanks, Michael. Claire, coming to you on that one, you're very close to our motor business. Do you see particular areas that excite you about how we can use this, but also others that maybe give you some cause for concern as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, AI really has its place in the claims industry. We've already started using it. We're already seeing processes that, we're using automation. We're seeing it working really well. But I think, the industry that we're in, you think someone's had an accident, they're making a notification of that accident. It can be quite a major life event. And I think what you can't replicate with AI is human empathy. And some people, I think it's all about customer choice, isn't it? And like you said earlier, Gary, you've got you've got customers that want to do everything electronically. They want to just do a click of a button, get the information, and that's done. But you've also got these customers where they want to speak to someone, they want to feel reassured, they want to know what the next steps are. And that might not be through the whole claims journey, but certainly that very first step of notifying their insurer and understanding what happens next. And I think when it comes to decision making, I think absolutely AI can make decisions. But it does base a lot on historic data. So where do the cases come in where a human might look at something on a case by case basis on its own merit and actually just do the right thing? I'm not saying everyone should be allowed to go out of process, but as a human, we have, we can make those conscious decisions. And I think that's what we can't get from AI.
Wayne, would you be happy if you had an insurance claim for it to be handled exclusively by an AI agent?
Yes and no. So if I said, okay, put myself in a customer's shoes. Okay, so say I've dropped an iron on a carpet. Okay, I'm quite happy for that entire process being done automatically. I might key some information out on a chatbot, for example, what's happened, and I don't really want to speak to anybody. I just want the whole process end to end to be handled. I've no issue whatsoever. Okay, if I'm married with 18 children living in a house and with an escape of water and it's Christmas and I've got the in-laws coming around at Christmas time and that whole place is flooded, the answer is no. The answer is no. So I think it is horses and courses here. In some ways, from a customer position, do they really see what happens in an insurance company? Do they see what happens underneath the hood of a company? Don't really, do they? So as long as the journey makes sense and happens at the right time and they're informed at the right time, in some ways, does it really matter? But different claims are going to need humans to help empathize and talk to them. Some claims aren't.
Yeah, and Wayne, I mean, we've discussed this ad nauseum internally, but this is no one is currently suggesting that we're removing humans from claims elements, right? We're trying to find smarter ways to do things, large data models, as Michael alluded to. It's almost helping the claims team as opposed to replacing them. Would that be fair?
No, I think it is. So if you break a claim journey down into its in small pieces, you've got first, got an F&O process. Okay. Most people are quite happy, apart from certain types of cases, for that process to be automated. Okay, decision making, because actually, does anybody really know if a human or a machine has decided which path the claim should go down? Okay, so you're quite happy for that point. The next point is assessing policy indemnity. Yeah, okay, that can be automated. Assessing if a claim's fraudulent or not. Yeah, that can be automated. And then is a claim accepted? Okay, I'm talking about first-party household, first-party mortgage, is a claim accepted? And then you're going down the supply chain journey after that, and then you've got a payment journey and you've got insights to pull the back of it. And when you break it down the components, actually pretty much all the claim can be automated by automation, technology, and AI. An entire journey can be. As I say, Gary, we're not going to say let's take people out of it, but all the components could be, apart from that kind of 50% of cases which are different, spectacular, and very, unusual.
Yeah, and Shu, coming to you, I mean, we've had discussions about, you know, we'll be using AI at some point this year to do effectively 100% audits. So it would look at every single claim that we've got in our repository and almost direct our physical auditors to say, these are the individuals, these are the caseloads that we need to focus on. What else do you see from a property perspective? What are you really comfortable that we automate, we use AI for, and where do you feel a little bit more nervous?
I think it's the lower value, more straightforward claims where I'm like the most comfortable overall. I think there are really good use cases for it in that place. I think it's where customers ultimately aren't necessarily wanting to have a human contact necessarily, but they want to feel a human outcome. They want to see that the claim is progressing and feel like things are going in the right direction for them, and that's what gives them the reassurance. But I think if things get a little bit more complex, whether that's a property claim or an injury claim, you know, you want a human in that space to give you that reassurance and that comfort that actually your interests are being looked after and that everything's going in the right direction. And I think my major concern of trying to take that out is one, that the insurance world was always built on people. We were a people industry first and foremost historically. But secondly, that AI gets things wrong. I asked ChatGPT before this session, you know, what's the current baseline hallucination rate for getting things wrong? And it said, you know, in a standard generic model, 10%, but in a more specialized field like insurance, upwards of 60%. That's a terrifying potential hallucination rate when you think about it. And in our world, you know, it's not just that risk that it gets it wrong on an individual claim, which will be bad, but it's that it gets it wrong at scale on thousands of claims when you're processing these things through, because that really will add up to longer claim durations, to more customers that aren't happy, to more complaints, you know, everything that it's really being brought into the journey to address. And even on those individual small claims, you know, one small hallucinated error won't stay small. If you get your triage wrong, you're going to send the claim on the wrong pathway. You might have to do multiple visits. You might see months of delay for a customer, etc. One small issue could become a very big one very quickly. So it really is going to be finding that balance long term.
Yeah. sorry, Stu, just before I forget, but I'm not. Did anybody see in the press recently about the police force who are using AI to generate police reports? And there's something I can share my screen. Can I share my screen? Can I share my screen? This is a headline. Everybody can see this, but it's a fantastic example of what can go wrong if you just completely take humans out of a process, don't audit what you're doing, and so on and so on. This is true. We can Google this. So just as like, so I think on that, yeah, you're quite right. Hallucinations are a real issue. And there's a risk sometimes with AI of landing on something, testing it a little bit, thinking, this is brilliant, this is fantastic, and then just launching it without thinking about what the kind of the whole consequences of that are.
I think as well, we've talked about this internally, but as more and more AI comes into decision making, claims handling, when it goes wrong, we're inevitably expecting the question of what's your human process to validate what your technology and AI is doing. So almost have a bounce back effect in terms of the pendulum and the way that works. Michael, what dangers, what concerns do we have with utilizing AI in claims management? What do you know, MGAs like the attendees that we've got here today, what do they need to be very conscious of when looking at this as a claim strategy?
So I think the real danger with AI is that the danger isn't immediately obvious or immediate in its effect. The danger is much quieter. It's where you start to use AI in a way that fundamentally starts to have negative impacts on your business. Those impacts start to compound over time, and by the time you notice, it's too late because you've automated something incorrectly at scale, as Stu mentioned. I'd probably summarize the danger as being three types of what I call AI drift. The first type of drift is usage drift. It's essentially using AI for something it's not essentially designed to do. So AI is very good. It's a very strong probabilistic pattern recognition system, very good at things like classification, anomaly detection. But if you start to give it responsibility for making decisions in a regulated environment, you're going beyond what AI is structurally designed to do. So what starts being convenient very quickly becomes overreach. Cost drift follows usage drift. When you use something incorrectly, it might look like you've taken cost out of the business, but you haven't. Those costs just migrate. So you've saved a little bit of processing up front, but then you find downstream it comes back in as indemnity leakage, complaints, litigation, and the costs and the impact is more volatile. So efficiency gains are basically masked as downstream volatility. And what looks like progress is simply cost displacement. But the most serious risk or danger, I think, with AI is accountability drift. It's where you start to delegate control or assume that AI can do things which it can take control for decisions instead of using it just as a tool for recommendations and supporting human oversight. And when you delegate too much to AI, humans start to lose oversight and accountability. And if you're doing that at scale, you're essentially introducing systemic and reputational risk in a business in a sector that's expected to manage risk responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point because we've got a host of MGAs on the call today. These guys with relatively lower GWPs compared to tier 1 insurers, a fundamental issue with AI decision making could potentially sink their business. It certainly could have detrimental impact on a particular loss year that they have in terms of loss ratio and people getting paid, profitability, bonuses, etc. So there are some pretty severe consequences attached to getting this right or wrong, I would guess. Wayne, your thoughts on that? What do we need to be cautious of when we're doing this?
I think Michael's covered it up quite nicely, really, and just all I really to add to that is around prompting. I think AI is fantastic at prompting towards where decisions need to be made versus actually making decisions. So a good example of that could be you can use AI to identify potential fraudulent claims, right? And it's fantastic at taking big data models, big data modeling it, looking at it, assessing risk, and saying, do you know what? I think this claim could be fraudulent. We need to do more work on it. What you wouldn't want to do is have a machine write out to a customer and say your claim is fraudulent because AI has just decided it, and you can see all the negative consequences on the back of that. So that, for me, it's again, what problem you're trying to solve? What is it you're trying to do here? And it's how do you use it in that sensible and honest way?
I think as well, along with this, like a real issue for us as an industry beyond the tech itself is actually the people element when tied to it.
Sure.
Like, it's not just about the model itself potentially getting it wrong, but it's that the people who are using it will naturally start to trust it. Like, I will use AI in my day-to-day all the time, and I will accept something it says to me as trustworthy. Until I feel like it's not trustworthy. I always use an example of being away on holiday last year and asking it for directions to go somewhere and said, is this a good place to go for dinner? And it said, yes, just go up the road and this restaurant will be there. And I went up the road and there was no restaurant. It said, you're right, it's another street on, keep going. All right, another street on, and then it wasn't there. And I said, this restaurant doesn't exist, does it? And it said, no, you're right, actually, it never existed. How stupid of me. Sorry about that. And that just sums up to me that AI just can't be fundamentally trusted. And in our world, which really does have so much technical decision making involved, there's a real risk of people going, well, the AI said to do it. And then your critical thinking just totally drops off. And that's already a real risk for us anyway in the post-COVID world, where we've got so many people working remotely, and there's, a lot of that on-the-job learning you used to get has already drifted away. AI is probably going to make that worse because AI responses will just be accepted without really questioning them.
I think
I'd
as well.
Probably add to that.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Thanks. I'd probably add to that the idea that AI shouldn't be seen as the end game. Although it's better in some ways than the rules-based systems that came before it. AI is actually the second wave of technology innovation. And it's not and there's a third wave that comes beyond it. So the first rules type systems between 1980s and 2015 were they were white box, they were very stable, they were very predictable, they just worked every single time, but they didn't scale, they were brittle. It was like having an employee that knows exactly, is very dependable, but if something new comes along, doesn't know what to do. AI, the second wave that we're currently in, is more like you have a drunk intern, like really talented intern that just has a serious hangover. and is fundamentally not trustworthy at all. I think there's going to be a third wave of technology, which probably will come in from around 2030 onwards, which basically gives you the benefits of both predictable rules-based systems as well as probability systems, but without the downsides of either. And I'm calling that sort of post-AI architecture. And that will be architecture that fundamentally does allow you to scale safely, because you can't do that with current technology.
Yeah, I think interestingly, the two probably biggest concerns that I have not necessarily been raised yet, which I think is we've all got different thoughts on this, and maybe it's just a different viewpoint from the role that I do. I started in insurance in 2008. I don't think there's a year that's gone by since then where insurers and their suppliers haven't talked about the quality of data. And if we're going to be using that data to inform future decision making through AI and data-led models, that gives me some nervousness, if I'm honest with you, particularly where we're relying on subsets that may have been subject to pure human entry in the past. And how do we validate and verify the quality of that before allowing it to move forward? I think the second part for me, and Claire, I'm going to come to you on this, is how does this impact insurers and TPA's people strategy? We had this conversation yesterday at a team meeting where nearly everyone on our team started by doing some form of admin or FNOL job, the sort of jobs that really are likely to be removed on the basis of introducing AI. Is there a concern that then we don't have the future leaders coming through and starting at that point? Are we going to be recruited from a different pool? How do we get that people strategy right? One for you, Claire, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that was a really important point, that, to get to these level of roles, you often start in those lower level roles. So, if we take all of those over of AI, when do we learn? How do we learn actually what a claim journey looks like if we don't start in those roles? And actually AI is doing it all for us. I think they can work alongside each other. So I think, a company can have a really strong people strategy alongside an AI strategy as well. But I think we need to understand where are people pivotal in our business. And what I'm kind of hearing from everyone's opinion is, whilst we think AI is great, we still think there's still human intervention to check AI. So actually, are we ever going to completely pull humans away? I don't think so, because I think they always need to be in the loop. I think, like a couple of people have commented on the trustworthiness of it. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point that we 100% trust the AI and we'll just completely take out the humans. I don't think we'll get there, which I think is why we need to keep, we need a strong people strategy to get people into those roles, and that does start at lower level sometimes. So yeah, we need to keep them there.
Michael, do you see a period in the future where the majority of CEOs and MDs of insurance companies are tech people?
Quite possibly. I mean, I suppose I'm unusual in the sense that I've held both CTO roles and COO roles. So I've been as equally happy sort of looking at the business as I have around technology. And the reality is, I don't think your business leaders, any business leaders, should be purely about the business or purely about tech. I think they do have to blend the two. And I would say, with regards to, I'd slightly disagree with what Claire was saying with regards to, will we ever get to a point where we can take the human out of the loop? I think the answer is yes, we can, but we can't today. And that's because technology today, and what's possible in this second wave of technology, doesn't allow you to do that safely at scale. The third wave will bring in the architectures that do exactly what we do want it to do, and fulfill our hopes for the technology. And with regards to sort of this people strategy versus technology strategy, we talk about them as if they're two separate things. But again, I don't think they should be. To me, it's about having a single strategy, because every change you make to a process, every process you automate, inevitably has a knock-on effect with regards to the human. So what we have to do as we automate each step is we have to say, what are we doing from a technology perspective? What are we also doing from the perspective of the claims handler? And how is it that as we automate at scale, we are able to continue to be very clear as an organization as to who is responsible for the process, Is it the technology or is it the human? Who's responsible for judgment? Is it this technology or the human? And who's accountable? Is it technology or the human? Today, technology isn't capable of, AI technology isn't capable of judgment and accountability. So that has to sit with the human, as Claire said.
So are we saying, Michael, by the third wave that we will have no risks?
I think those risks will be modeling or implementation risks. But in the third wave, what we'll see is essentially a way for technology to be able to make decisions which are fully explainable and traceable. So what you'll be able to sort of say is, of all possible decisions that could be made on this particular claim, in this particular context, with this particular information, this is the only correct decision that we should make now, versus, and all other possible decisions are suboptimal. So you'll need to have an architecture which essentially can prove to itself that it is made the correct decision and that no other decision would be better, and whether or not it needs to acquire more data in order to achieve that level of confidence. Once you have that sort of structural capability in terms of decision making, it is indeed possible to take the human out of the loop, and you can safely automate at scale, providing you still continue to draw the boundaries as to where can technology not exercise judgment and where do we need to exit to a human.
Stu, one for you here, if I could ask you a question. So we've mentioned fraud and how valuable this will be as a tool in combating fraud. Is there, and obviously Stu was a fraud lawyer for those that don't know as well, has done a lot of fraud handling. Is there also a danger that sophisticated AI models could understand something like fraud triggers associated with the insurance industry and create ways of avoiding that and finding straight through automated processing? I mean, is there, this is very helpful for all, but it could also be an attack method from fraud perspective as well, Stu?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the counter fraud aspect of this is going to become a bit of a new Wild West in claims coming up, is my gut feeling, to be honest, because the tools to detect it are going to get better, but the tools to commit it are equally getting better and better. So it's going to be a real battle against each other. AI, I think, will be really fantastic around, doing your screening, identifying risks early, spotting patterns, etc. But I think there's a risk in the overall models that we move from, immediately turning suspicions into a decision, which isn't the customer journey you actually want when you're dealing with people in this process. People can very innocently trigger a fraud concern without any actual fraud, malice, or backing behind it. But the tools and stuff out there that, could open themselves up to fraud are staggering at the moment. A lot of people in the audience have probably seen the viral video in the last week of Tom Cruise fighting Brad Pitt in 5 minutes, and that was done with a new AI model by ByteDance, the owners of TikTok, and it apparently took 5 minutes to get generated. Well, how quickly could that create, a compelling set of evidence to support a property damage claim or a road traffic accident? And we spent a lot of time talking about how you can have an amazing model for low value, straightforward claims here. That kind of evidence is the exact kind of stuff that could be tailored to go bang into that model, get straight through the processing and get paid out without a single set of human eyes on it. It's a gigantic risk, and it's going to be interesting to see how we tackle it.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Stu. That's really helpful, actually. I want to ask a question to everyone now. If you had a pretty low velocity motor accident tomorrow, and you had the option of reporting your claim via telephone or via an app or an email process, what would you choose to do? Wayne, can I go to you first on that?
Yeah, I'd use an app. Unless the actual situation was one of those where you have a crash, it's the other person's fault, but they claim they weren't at fault, and you want to get your story across. And you think, you know what, I need to ring up and just tell my story in that particular way. Other than that, no, I'm quite happy just to, at my leisure, key it in and just wait to see what happens next.
Michael?
I would say the sort of first question I ask myself is not, should I use digital or should I speak to somebody? I'm sort of seeking clarity and reassurance. So I think if the Given that this is low complexity and low emotion, I would probably go for digital. But where it's high emotion or high complexity, I'd be looking to speak to somebody. And I think what's important is that we don't go from a position where it used to be that insurers would say you can only speak to us over the phone to a position where you can only communicate with us digitally. I think that choice has to be with the customer. And whatever channel they choose, that channel has to be as good as the alternative. Digital should be just as smart as the individual, and a human should be just as immediate and accessible as digital.
Would you go with an insurer that was digital only, Michael?
No, because I don't think it's balanced. I think that it's about achieving balance between cost to the insurer of processing and reassurance to the customer in terms of servicing. So any digital only modes just don't feel right to me. Technology should be used to make the process more human, not less.
Okay. Claire, you would report by phone, I'm going to guess.
Do you know what? I wouldn't. I
wouldn't?
would use an app. Yeah, no, I absolutely would. And I think, you know, the point that I tried to get across is kind of absolutely what Michael just said. It's all about options. It's about giving the customer the choice. And I think whilst I work in the industry, I have a high understanding, but I have an 18-year-old son who, if he had an accident tomorrow, I would absolutely tell him, call your insurer, because he doesn't understand the process and he probably needs a little bit more reassurance. So I think, you know, it absolutely is about customer choice, and Michael's, you know, bang on that they all need to be as good as each other, but the customer should be able to choose how to report, how to manage the journey, and we should be able to satisfy both electronic and human.
Claire, clearly fishing for you don't look old enough to have an 18-year-old son comments.
Well, Gary, what can I say?
Stu,
I've also got an 80-year-old granddad.
Stu?
I think I'm broadly agree with everyone else. If it's dead straightforward, then yeah, I just want speed. I want to upload the details via an app, get the confirmation, get it paid, move on without picking up the phone to someone. But if it's a bit more complex, if there's a few more emotions thrown into the mix, if you know liability is going to be in dispute, then I'd want to speak to a person. And I think that's really been where we've been at as a business in like the last couple of years when we've chatted about this as well. Like, customers really want a human involved in these situations when the situation calls for a human to be involved in these situations. And that's ultimately what we need to design for. And you'd hope these apps, etc., in the future will realize that as you move forward and go, look, we're giving the right communication, we're pitching the right tone, but actually I can tell this customer needs to speak to someone based on what they're saying. So we're going to get someone to pick up the phone to them now. And that's what you need, really. These things always go wrong when a customer ultimately feels like they're just not getting what they want. And I'm sure we've all been the same, whether you're chatting to Amazon or Uber Eats when things go wrong. As soon as you're not getting the answer you want, you say, put me through to a human. And that's it. That's key.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, guys. This is probably the big one for me. So when we started talking in detail about this, say 2 years ago now, I listened to a number of podcasts and read some audiobooks or listened to some audiobooks about AI strategies. And what I found going through those is it was actually all about strategy. It was pontification about the application of a strategy for business. What I found it really difficult to find is tell me how to use the tools that are available to integrate into what I want to do and make it happen. So this is probably one more for Wayne and Michael. Wayne, I'll come to you first. You know, for the guys on the call, what should they be looking to use to create AI journeys, automated journeys within their claims processes?
Okay, so in terms of the software itself, in terms of an approach to
the software, the software.
Okay. So I guess it depends if you want this. I mean, from an AI position, are you looking to build your own models with your own data that's going to predict outcomes, or what's much more popular for very good reasons in integrate generative AI into your journey? So Mike will be able to talk in more detail in terms of the actual mechanics of that. But what you're looking to do essentially is to work with and prompt a GPT model or model of sorts, which can then complement within your journey and can pick up a proportion of what you want to do and simply get it locked into your technology so that information flows in, information flows out, and then you've got a opportunity then to automate or to drive prompts on based on that. And that's a real simplistic way of explaining it. So there's a huge number of GPT models out there. So the favorite everybody will talk about is ChatGPT, right? That's one. There's a huge number of companies out there with a huge number of different models which are built for different use case and different outcomes.
Michael, what about, I mean, you've got some of these tools yourself, of course. So what should people be looking to interact with from a tools perspective to, let's just say an MGA here is at the starting point of using this sort of stuff to try to think about pricing, claims, whatever it may be. What would you be leaning them towards?
So first of all, there are a lot of AI solutions that solve a very specific problem in pricing or claims, and which can be consumed via an API and are designed specifically for insurance and can be accessed, for example, through our InsurTech marketplace. Really good solutions, but I think that I wanted to make a point that's slightly more widely than choosing the tools. I think it's actually more important to focus on the tools that help you control the use of AI, not the AI tools themselves. So for example, I think that when it comes to modeling your business, what's actually really important going forward is you have some tool that helps you model how does this process work, who makes decisions and why, and when do we move this into a different process. At runtime, I think what we need is to have better tooling to actually monitor what AI is doing at runtime. To what extent how well are the models performing? Are they being overridden by a human? Are there breaches that need to look into? And the third thing is I think we need to focus on tools that focus less on process metrics and more on outcomes. So trying to understand, not just how efficient the process is, but are we achieving the economic outcomes we want as an insurer, or the consumer duty outcomes we want for our customers, with those leveraging those AI tools.
You've got on mute, Gary.
Apologies. Michael, so another question for you on that. Yeah, the industry is mixed with people that are hugely pro technology and pro automation. There's others that have a more degree of a skepticism, not to say that they're completely against it, but they have some concerns. Do you worry that in some instances people won't see the bigger picture with AI and technology, that they'll focus on individual claims that maybe customer interaction led by a chatbot has been very poor, and use that to almost scapegoat technology to say it doesn't work, when the reality is, and this is the same for everything, but we really need to focus on the bigger picture. You talked about outcomes. What are we trying to achieve here? There's an operational efficiency piece, of course, there's customer metrics, there's average cost per claim, there's fraud detection, key things that we all seek as a claims department. We need to focus on those bigger ticket items, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I've seen a lot is the problem is not necessarily the technology. The problem is the execution of that technology. And sometimes companies may need to go through 2 or 3 rounds of iterative learning in order to understand what the technology is, how it works, how to get the best out of it. The danger is if they don't think very carefully about execution, they'll try it once and then dismiss it. But I think there's a bigger problem here, a bigger picture problem that we're missing. We've been working, I'm old enough now for, to have been in this industry for nearly 30 years. I'm a grandfather of 2 now. And we've always been doing digital transformation in claims. But I think now that the end game is in sight, we can see how we might get to the point where we could automate claims at scale. We'll realize that we've been asking ourselves the wrong question for the past 30 years. The whole objective of technology isn't actually to automate the end-to-end process. It's to create outcomes that represent a fair balance in terms of delivering on the economic needs of an insurer or MGA, as well as balancing their obligations towards the consumer, and the ability to evidence that the outcomes that were reached on that claim were appropriate and defensible to yourselves internally, to your customer, and to the regulator. And what we haven't done over the last 30 years is really focus on measuring outcomes. We've been so obsessed with automating process, and I think that's one of the things I think that needs to shift. And in that way, I think it probably answers your question about how we bring skeptics and non-skeptics together. It's by focusing on outcomes, not tools.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Just for everyone here, we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I can direct them out as necessary. Or as I said, we'll be happy to take questions offline and answer them separately if you've got anything you don't want to populate in front of everyone. Predictions then, guys. So give us a prediction for the next 5 years. What do you see AI automation doing, achieving? I'd like the answers to be broad but also specific as well. So, you know, if you think that you foresee a future in 5 years where actually fraud is generally governed by AI analytics, then please let us know that as well. Wayne, to you first, please, if I can.
Okay, give me a few seconds to think about this one. No, okay. So what will I see in 5 years? So I think we might start to see true augmentation. Okay, and what I mean by that is where we've got case handlers actually picking up the parts of a journey which they offer most expertise in, and there's less and less of picking up parts of a journey which is failure demand or things which could have been automated or things which AI could have driven us down a route to make that decision.
Makes sense. Stu?
Yeah, probably two things for me. I agree with Wayne. I think there's a lot of obvious areas in our world where we're using skilled people to do work that doesn't require any actual skill. You know, there's a lot of work involved in reading, extracting data, inputting data, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what, you know, the real experts in this industry, field experts, et cetera, are trained for. I do hope that AI and automation can take that out of the day-to-day for those people moving forward and make their life easier. I think from a customer point of view as well, started this mentioning, you know, Amazon, Uber, etc. I think it would be so good for, you know, customers to our industry to understand what's happening and why, even when things aren't being managed perfectly. There's a lot more transparency and a lot more visibility that we could give as an industry that just brings to life what everyone's doing. I think Wayne said earlier on, you know, there's such a detailed process behind the scenes that customers are totally unaware of. Obviously, you don't want to bring that entirely to life, but it would be good for customers to actually see the effort that goes into these things on their behalf day to day.
I agree. Claire, over to you. You're on mute.
There's always one, isn't there? It's always me. I think what we'll see in the next 5 years is we'll see that AI will really help us look at our data. I think, you know, data at the moment it's quite manual. Someone has to look at it, someone has to, you know, identify the trends, etc. I think what AI will do is it will be able to gather that data, it'll be able to look at it, it'll be able to pick out trends, do all that manual work for us a lot quicker, which means we can implement changes quicker, which means we can evolve better and we can change quicker than what we are doing today. I think that's one of the real positives of AI, is that it'll be able to take that and just run with it. I think from a customer perspective, I'm not sure. I'm probably a little bit of a pessimist. I think we'll see, you know, we will still need that human interaction, but, you know, I'm happy to be proved wrong, and we'll see in 5 years.
I think a lot of what you were just saying there, though, Claire, hopefully if we use the data right, we'll hopefully free up the claims team to spend that extra time with the customers, not less.
Absolutely. Michael?
I suppose my biggest hope for AI is that we can see past the AI hype. And that we don't start to credit AI with powers that it simply doesn't have nor can ever have, and that we focus, we think intelligently about our deployment of AI. We think more about the control and architecture around AI, and that as businesses we focus more on outcomes, not tooling.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Michael, actually. Sure, I want to ask you this because we're responding to tenders regularly, and the waiting and demand around AI and technology has become significant. I do get a little bit concerned that the value of that becomes so high that it forces suppliers into creating something that, as Michael said, maybe is beyond the realms of the AI or the technology's capability. You know, a reach of the stars sort of situation, but actually where we're being judged on something that doesn't add discernible value. Is that a concern of yours, Stu?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's, I don't want to say this with two actual AI experts on this with us, but I think there is probably a lot of snake oil out there at the moment in terms of what the capability of tools and technology is and what it can do. And I think a lot of people, and I think it's aligns with a lot of what Michael's been saying, to be fair, people are really rushing to get the shiniest or most exciting things and be the first to market with, you know, automation or buzzwordy tools, etc. And it doesn't necessarily add value. You're just throwing an extra tool on top of an existing workflow without thinking. That's been Wayne's point. Without thinking, what's the point? Are you just doing it for the sake of it? And like, yeah, you know, it's got its place. I think everyone agrees that AI is going to be here to stay for us in the future, and it's going to add value. But to a certain extent, I think my broad view is probably that the boring stuff might actually matter more here. The behind the scenes plumbing. If you free up your admin, you get rid of your double keying, and you let your staff do the work that ultimately does add the value and spend time with your customers, you're probably going to become a market leader in what you do with better life cycles, better complaint ratios, and lower costs.
I think on that, I think sorry, I was going to say as well. I think on that, I think pointing to Michael's point about focusing on outcomes, right? So I've got this dream. Right, I've got this dream is that a customer after the F&O process, and we might not even do it at that point, never has to write or ring their insurance company after the F&O process. Okay, so it's completely a push transactional service where the insurance company gives all the information, the claims handling business, all the information to the customer, tells them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what's going to happen, why it's happening, and finishes it. Right? I mean, they never have to complain because everything's being done in the correct way. You can't do that without AI. You really can't, because what a good Gen AI machine can do is it can understand the customer's mood. It can understand when they feel that they need to be contacted, and it can measure what's happening in all the phases of the process. It can identify the claims which are off track versus on track. It can track what needs to happen in most cases. And I think it's incredibly important as a tool to drive an outcome as opposed to handling a claim for you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everyone. I think the key, you know, this is incredibly exciting. There's a lot to consider here, a lot of huge positives, a lot of things to ensure that you put in place to protect against some of the pitfalls that the guys talked through as well. But this is no doubt the first of many conversations that we'll all be having around this over the next few years. For those interested and want to know a little bit more about Innovation Group, our products, our technology, please feel free to get in touch with me. Similarly, for claims technology products, Michael will be available to chat. Thanks very much for your time, and I'll hand back to Manveen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gary. I've just put a little shout out in the chat to ask if anyone has got any questions. I appreciate we've got a few minutes left for questions. I'm just also going to enable cameras and microphones. So if anyone does prefer to raise their hand and ask, come off mute and turn their camera on and ask the panel directly, please do. So any questions from our audience? Let's give it a minute in case anyone is.
This is the weird part where you have to sit in silence and wait for a question, Manveen, right?
Just a little bit, yeah, just to see if anything comes from the chat. I'm going to assume no one wants to ask one verbally. Can't see anything come through the chat. So unless anything comes up just while I mention our survey. So we, as always, we do ask that you just give some feedback on our sessions. It just means that we can continue making sure that we put out the right content and interesting topics for our members. I'm just going to share the survey. No questions have come in while I've done that, so I'm going to assume you've been really thorough and you've answered all the questions, or if anyone does want to ask questions, they'll want to reach out to you directly. So we'll wrap up there. And I just want to say thank you to our panel from Innovation Group and for their time, and for all our members for joining us today. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.